Chief Justice stresses importance of Hong Kong's independent judiciary. Solder found to be source of lead water contamination with some homes recording levels far beyond British standards. And President Xi Jinping formally welcomed in Washington. Good evening. Chief Justice Geoffrey Ma today reaffirmed the importance of an independent judiciary to Hong Kong's stability and prosperity. The role of the judiciary has come under the spotlight following recent remarks by a mainland official that the chief executive has a special legal status in Hong Kong. In the presence of mainland and local officials, Chief Justice Geoffrey Ma did not hold back his words. Delivering the keynote speech at the opening ceremony of the Court of Final Appeal's new headquarters, he stressed the importance of an independent judiciary to Hong Kong's past and future success.
Decisions of the courts may sometimes not be to everybody's liking, whether they be private individuals, political and other groups, or even the government. But it is not the role of the courts to make popular decisions.
Ma said the basic law states that Hong Kong has independent judicial power. He stressed the importance of the mini-constitution in preserving Hong Kong's common law jurisdiction with due recognition of civil rights and fundamental freedoms and equality of all persons before the law. Among those on hand for the speech, the mainland's Chief Justice and President of the Supreme People's Court, Zhou Qiang, and the Director of the Central Government's Liaison Office, Zhang Xiaoming. Zhang sparked controversy earlier by saying the Chief Executive has a special legal status above the executive, legislative and judicial branches, and that Hong Kong does not practice the separation of powers. Meanwhile, former Chief Justice Andrew Lee stressed Hong Kong's judicial independence is here to stay in a newspaper article. In what is perhaps one of his most pointed remarks, Lee notes that although the National People's Congress Standing Committee has the power to override a decision by Hong Kong's highest court, it should do so only exceptionally, as that undermines the independence of the SAR's judiciary. He rebutted reservations expressed by mainland academics regarding the presence of an overseas judge in the Court of Final Appeal. Lee said this judge is bound by the same oath as local peers. He stressed this arrangement has gained the confidence of the public and the international community and enhances the independence of the judiciary. Lee also made clear no one is above the law. A government task force looking into the tainted water scandal has found that the level of lead in some affected pipes was more than 500 times higher than the British standards. And as Evelina Leung reports, preliminary findings show that solder joints are the source of the contamination.
It's been nearly 2 months since the tainted water scandal broke. A task force set up to look into the incident released its preliminary findings today. The group said it dismantled components from the water supply chain, including copper pipes, valves, taps and solder joints at Kai Ching Estate and Kwai Lun Estate to try to find the source of the contamination.
Initially here, we found that copper pipes did leach lead into the water. And after elemental analysis and cleansing of the copper pipe here, we didn't find any leaching of lead from copper pipe. So therefore, we exclude the contribution of copper pipe to the lead leaching. And so we confined our focus onto blast fittings and as well as the solder joint. And we also have done isotopic analysis as well as modeling, mathematical modeling analysis. And from that, we can conclude that the majority of the lead in the drinking water came from solder joints. And blast fitting here did contribute some.
The task force added the amount of the heavy metal found in the solder joints of the water pipes at some homes was 585 times the British standard. And the contamination was due to poor craftsmanship of the solder joints. The task force is expected to release its final findings in October. Meantime, the Water Supplies Department admitted today a revision of the law related to the inspection of water is needed, as the current legislation was established in 1975. Evnia Lang, TVB News.
The latest population projections by the government have highlighted Hong Kong's ageing problem. There's also a growing imbalance between working people and dependents. Rani Samtani takes a closer look.
Hong Kong's population is expected to grow gradually before declining. The Census and Statistics Department projects the population to increase from 7.24 million in mid-2014 to a peak of 8.22 million in mid-2043. Afterwards, the population will decrease at a rate of 0.2% per year to 7.81 million in mid-2064.
It is projected that Hong Kong will experience population decline in the 2040s. This is mainly due to a significant increase in the number of deaths. The number of deaths in 2043 is very large. It is much larger than number of baby born and number of new immigrants going to Hong Kong.
Life expectancy is also expected to go up. By 2064, the government predicts men to live an average of 87 years and women to live 92.5 years. Coupled with a low birth rate, the government said this will aggravate our aging population problem.
Population aging is expected to be most rapid in the coming 20 years as post-war baby boomer will enter into old age. The proportion of elderly aged 64 and over is projected to rise markedly from 50% in 2014 to 36% in 2064.
Right now, 1 out of 6 people is aged 65 or over. In 20 years' time, it will be 1 out of 3. Tang noted this will have an alarming impact on the dependency ratio, the number of dependents in relation to the working age population. The gender imbalance is expected to get worse in the future. It's believed that the ratio of men to women will almost be 40 to 60 in the year 2064. But the Census and Statistics Department says this disparity is only predominant among the older population. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
President Xi Jinping is in Washington for a landmark state visit to the United States. US President Barack Obama welcomed Xi with an elaborate ceremony on the White House lawn this morning. Following the ceremony, the formal summit began and a lavish state dinner is planned for later in the day. But the pomp and pageantry is not expected to mask the tensions over cybersecurity, Beijing's economic policies and its territorial disputes with its neighbors. Alan Buckner reports.
Following a 2.5-day stay in the West Coast technology and aviation hub of Seattle, President Xi arrived in Washington, where he was greeted by U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. It was then off to the White House for an informal dinner with U.S. President Barack Obama. The real nitty-gritty begins today, when touchy issues such as cybercrime and China's growing territorial claims are on the table. One significant announcement is expected. U.S. officials say the two leaders will release a joint statement on climate change, on how they plan to achieve targets for cutting carbon emissions set at a summit in Beijing last year. And Xi plans to announce a blueprint for a nationwide cap-and-trade system beginning in 2017. The hot-button issue of cybersecurity was touched on at a news conference in Washington yesterday. The Obama administration is considering sanctions against Chinese companies and individuals it accuses of stealing U.S. trade secrets. But Beijing has repeatedly denied any cyber attacks.
China is also a victim of a cyber attack, cyber crime, and all those kind of issues. And just like many other countries, but we never hastily accuse any other country.
Liu did say there is a possibility of a deal against cyber warfare between the two countries.
Whatever might be set up, whatever might be carried out, they should be based on these 3 principles. I mean, the mutual respect, mutual understanding, mutual beneficial, and equality.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is still trying to curb Beijing's assertiveness in the South China Sea. China is accused of reclaiming land for potential military use. Obama is also expected to press Xi to follow through on economic reforms and refrain from discriminating against U.S. companies operating in China. Analysts say he has more leverage here. due to China's slowing economic growth, which has rattled world markets. Alan Buknia, TVB News.
Staying in America, U.S. House of Representatives Speaker John Boehner will resign and step down from Congress at the end of October. An assistant to Boehner says his resignation will take effect on October 30th. Boehner has been under pressure from the far right of his Republican Party to take a more hardline stance against President Obama and congressional Democrats. Pope Francis addressed the United Nations General Assembly tonight, telling world leaders more needs to be done on climate change. Last night, he made a historic speech to the US Congress, urging America to end its hostility to immigrants. Tony Sabine reports.
After thrilling the crowds in Washington, Pope Francis headed to New York, where he received an enthusiastic welcome from residents of the Big Apple. Even the Donald took time out of his schedule to catch a glimpse of the Pope as he drove down Fifth Avenue. St. Patrick's Cathedral was packed with Catholic faithful as Francis arrived to say Mass. He began the service by offering a prayer for the victims of the Hajj stampede near Mecca. The pontiff again raised the clergy sex abuse crisis by consoling clergy for the suffering the scandal had caused them. And he praised the work of America's nuns, thanking them for their service and commitment, much to the delight of the crowd and nuns attending the service. While most seemed happy to have Francis in town, others hoped the pontiff would continue to address the painful legacy of the Church's child abuse scandals.
We're calling on Pope Francis to please put victims first, put all the other agendas second, because unless you resolve this issue, it's going to continue to fester.
Before New York, Francis made history on Capitol Hill by becoming the first pontiff to address both houses of Congress. As an Argentinian, he stressed to the more than 500 lawmakers and officials gathered that everyone in the chamber were sons and daughters of the Americas, and all could trace their roots to a non-American land.
In recent centuries, millions of people came to this land to pursue the dream of building a future in freedom. We, the people of this continent, are not fearful of foreigners, because most of us